Hello, and welcome to Stubbornly Incorrect, the podcast where I, Jack Watchman, share my thoughts into many different things, none of them true. Today's stupid theory is that there are creatures that hide 80% of everything that humans lose. If you've ever lost something and you don't know why, there's a high chance that one of these creatures has hidden that item. I'm sure there's many times in your life that you have no clue why something was lost. You're 100% sure that you placed it down somewhere, and this is to give you peace of mind that there's actually a group of creatures running around hiding everything. You may say, because you've never seen one before, that they could not possibly be real, but that's because they're incredibly stealthy. Some people may say that it's just better to imagine that people leave stuff places, but I disagree, because I lose stuff far too often. I would much rather believe that there was someone else doing that than me. I would say that these creatures act mostly in self-preservation, considering no human has been able to catch one so far. But they're just completely unable to resist the idea of hiding stuff from people. This is because they want to sow chaos within humanity in order to bring them down, so then they won't have to hide any longer. We're their greatest predators, as we're the only people who can really notice their hijinks. Have you ever been unable to find something, and then you get someone else to look and they find it? This is one other way that they try and put the humans against each other. By hiding items one minute and then returning them the next, it makes people believe that other people are completely stupid and unworthy of their time, breaking down their community spirit. You could also bring up this point that how have they not been caught on camera? But that's just because they only do it when they know they're not being watched. They're not stupid. They're quite smart creatures overall. Some people may say that it's a tad unsettling to maybe believe that there might be some small creatures hiding stuff from you that you just cannot see and have never seen. But what would you rather believe? That there's some sort of freak creature running around, or that you actually lose stuff over and over again? I'd much prefer to believe that the creatures exist. I'd like to believe that I'm not the person who consistently has poor organisational skills. Many experts are constantly trying to figure out why humans are constantly losing things, but they all seem to miss out the fact that there possibly could be someone hiding them from us. Professor Michael Solomon told Vice in an article that it's just an ineluctable part of the human condition that we keep losing things, but that could possibly be the human condition being manipulated. A few suggestions have been made, including the fact that the human brain can only focus on one thing at once, and that by being distracted by something, that might be why we constantly lose things. But perhaps because we're constantly distracted by something else, that's the reason why we're not noticing them hiding our stuff, rather than it being the other way around. Perhaps it's now just a symptom of the modern world that we keep losing things, because we now have so many other things to keep track of compared to what we used to. It's now very rare that people leave the house without taking multiple things with them. Most people carry their keys, their phone, their headphones, various different devices, different identifications with them, their wallet, and at this point perhaps we've got so many different things that these creatures are now just taking advantage of that and hiding them from us, especially when we're just about to leave the house and live our lives. By interrupting our lives, they can make us fail as a species, and then perhaps after we fail as a species, they can thrive a lot more. Perhaps because now many of us lead more comfortable lives than we did many years ago, this means we have now become complacent, and that's why we keep losing things, because they now hold less value to us. But perhaps because we've become so comfortable, it's actually the creatures taking advantage of that, and taking our stuff from under our noses because we no longer hold so much value to it. According to a survey by mynametags.com, the most commonly lost children's items are school jumpers and school books. What does this tell you? Perhaps these creatures are stealing our children's educational supplies in order to reduce the intelligence of future generations of humans, in order to have easier targets in the future. Now we're going to hear the thoughts of the general public on this concept.
Right, well, obviously it's not true, but at the same time, now that it's been brought up, I sort of feel that it could be true, because there's a lot of times where I'll put something on the side and there is no possible way I've moved it, and I haven't been in my room since I put it on the side, and I'll get back and it's gone. And I'm like, what is going on currently? Because I don't move anything, and sometimes it just goes walkies, but I don't know. it's a plausible concept. It's like Horton Hears a Who, I guess.
I genuinely do think that there are little creatures that make all your stuff go missing, because it gets to the point in your life where it surely can't be a coincidence that you end up with this many odd socks. Like, how would... They must be real! They must be! I see them in my room!
There we heard from some members of the public who can just not deny the plausibility of this theory. This is despite the fact that lots of people would not believe in this stuff and find it completely implausible. Perhaps if more people were like these members of the public, these creatures would not thrive in such a way, as would be more likely to be able to find them, if more people are on guard and looking for said creatures. An interesting point was raised by one of the members of the public about missing socks. Whilst there is definitely other reasons why it might be difficult to find a pair of socks, such as it being lost in the dryer, or losing it while washing, or losing it in the garden when hanging stuff up to dry, it does appear to happen far too often for it to be a coincidence, and this provides further evidence to the existence of these creatures. And this made me think more into even more famous missing items. Items such as the sceptre of Dagobert, which went missing in the late 18th century. While it was presumed to have been stolen, there is no guarantee that that is the case. Especially if we believe that these creatures may exist, perhaps they're stealing precious items from around the world, perhaps in an attempt to taunt humans and take away their cultural identity. Now we're going to look at the possible evidence to be found in folklore as to whether or not these creatures exist or do not. In many different cultures, there's lots of folklore discussing the existence of little creatures. Many of these creatures are considered pranksters that pull tricks on humans. This lines up very well with the theory that there are little creatures that steal stuff from us. Examples of these folklore creatures include the Irish folklore leprechauns, the Dokkaebi from Korean folklore, and the much more widely acknowledged folklore of goblins and hobgoblins. The idea that there are these little creatures running around is pretty widespread across the whole world. Does this not suggest that they in some way exist, considering there is so much overlap between each country's idea of what these creatures are? The common themes that are prevalent within the folklore of these creatures is that they're mischievous, and that they prank humans. The existence of these common themes being prevalent across nearly every single one of these folklore suggests the fact that there might be some truth to these claims. Much of this folklore has been used to inform modern storytelling, so the idea of their existence has continued into the modern times. Perhaps because the existence of such creatures has been fictionalised to such a degree, we are now unlikely to believe that they actually exist, and that's the way they can hide from us. Because if we aren't looking for something, it's unlikely that we'll find it, allowing these creatures to hide in plain sight and continue to trick us. Despite all the evidence I've curated here, this theory is a load of rubbish and doesn't really hold much standing. These folklore tales have significant cultural influence in the countries they're from, and should not be dismissed as unimportant. While I personally don't actually believe in this theory, hopefully this podcast reveals that you can really make an argument towards anything if you consistently misinterpret information in order to make your point stronger. This type of technique can be used in much more malicious ways than just attempting to make a ridiculous theory seem plausible. So it's always good when listening to podcasts and consuming other media to keep an eye out for these techniques, to not allow people to use them in malicious ways. In conclusion, despite the fact that this theory is definitely entirely false, I hope I have made some sort of point that could make some sense towards it, as that would be the goal for this podcast from now on. This podcast is all in good fun, and it's only meant to be an experiment where you see how far you can push something in order to make it seem plausible even when it definitely isn't. I hope you enjoyed this experiment, and you'll tune in next time when we explore more ridiculous theories. Thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.